everyone. Welcome to Outer Worlds Comics. My name is Jeff. Glad that you joined my first episode. I've been spending the last like 7, 8 months uh, really diving into comic books. It's become a new obsession and kind of built on an old obsession. So before we get to that Grail under the stairs, I thought we'd maybe do a little history lesson on kind of where I'm coming from and kind of some of the books I'm going to show off here to start episode one. So going way back, I mean, we're talking late 80s, probably 87, 88. My history started by I had moved to a town in Ohio, and somehow I ended up at a comic book store, and it was in an old schoolhouse, if I recall, and kind of got, I remember kind of vaguely digging through boxes of comics and kind of falling in love with some early titles. Um, and the thing that really kind of captured my interest there was the comic book store owner had a late night, kind of like those Dungeons and Dragon things, but Marvel had one, role playing games, and I got invited to come. I think I was probably in seventh grade. So I got to go to an all night role playing Marvel game night thing, and it was amazing. I got to be in a comic book store as a what I don't know 12 year old, and hang out with a bunch of comic book nerds. And boy, it was a really impactful night. I think I did it a few times. It was so cool, and I was able to really dig into some comics, obviously during that time. And my earliest memories of books that I really loved is amazingly, I was into books like Alpha Flight and West Coast Avengers, and I kind of vaguely remember maybe being into New Mutants as well. But those are the three titles that really stand out to me, and I believe I started collecting them. I remember having short boxes of comics, um, and that's kind of where I got started. And then from there, I think it was probably 88, 89. I didn't do the research to remember the actual release date, but that Batman movie came out with Michael Keaton. And that was a real game changer. That was such a cool movie and took everybody, took the world by storm and definitely got me. So I became a bit of a Batman fan at that time. Definitely remember getting into a little Spider-Man. For some reason, I remember being in a Web of Spider-Man. So I got into some Web of Spider-Man, and 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 you know that's kind of it. Those were my titles that I was into, and from there, I really I was already into music a little bit at the time, but definitely started kind of shifting more into that music world. I was playing a little sports, playing some basketball, hip hop, all that kind of stuff. We moved around a lot when I was a kid. So kind of fell out of the comic book world, really, until I was in college. At some point, I remember thinking about my comics, and then that's a back side story as to what happened to them, but they kind of disappeared. And I didn't have any comic books again, and never really looked at anything until my first daughter was born in 2006. And in this time, we have a baby. I got a lot of, kind of at the home, at the house a lot, helping, raise her. So, and eBay was, probably had already been a thing at that time, and I probably used it for records, but I started using it for comic books. And I bought a ton of comic books. To me, back then, they seemed like they were pretty cheap. So I was buying, kind of refilling all of those comics I lost. So I bought like huge lots of West Coast Avengers and Alpha Flight, and I kind of got into the Hulk at the time, so was just buying loads of Hulk. I think I bought loads of Wolverine. I was grabbing just boatloads of comics and stacking them quickly. And really, really at the time, I had no idea about um, value or anything like that. I wasn't researching I didn't know anything about keys or anything like that. I was just buying what I liked, which was those old comics that I used to read. At around that time, I also then went into a comic book store locally. So let's say this is 2008, 9 ish. So then is what happened is going to this comic book store, I started discovering some pretty exciting titles at the time and getting hyper focused on certain kind of runs. So one of the things that I really got into at the time was the learning about Planet Hulk and then World War Hulk, and ultimately I started collecting all that, which then eventually turned into the Red Hulk run, which was really cool. And I got into some DC, which I hadn't done before, other than Batman, which was I got into the Dark Blackest Night event, which was really cool. Which the Planet Hulk and the Blackest Night thing really turned me on to events. So then I was like, well, I've got to collect like all of the Marvel events that I can think of, which was, going back to my childhood days with Secret Wars, which was obviously a huge thing for me when I got into comic books back in the late '80s. I was obsessed with Secret Wars. Um, so I got in. I basically was like, I'm going to collect every crossover event that Marvel's done, or any significant one, I should say. So that was, around this time, which was Secret Invasion, Civil War, but then you had some really cool cosmic ones, which was like Annihilation, and then there was another one after Annihilation, which now I'm totally drawing a blank on, but got into all of them, used eBay for some of the old ones, and kind of completed a bunch of events. So yeah, so did a lot of collecting from, like, I don't know when that was. Let's say 2008 to 2011, which then we moved to Colorado. Job kind of got very busy, and really I was collecting records, at the same time when I was doing comics, and the really from 99 and from on the records from 99, and never really stopped. But that really became my focus. I love music, going to concerts and stuff. And so I really kind of focused on records. And a little bit of COVID, I did pop into a comic book store and started picking up some Immortal Hulk because, again, I love the Hulk. He's probably my favorite character. Um, but yeah, so really my focus was on records. So the story starts to get caught up to where we're at now, which was last year in May. I just had some idle time, and I tend to get kind of focused on organizing and things like that. I've got my basement down here. I like to keep it organized. I've got, in my years of collecting and things like that, I like to be organized, my records and stuff like that. So I was like, I'm going to go down and take a look at these boxes, these long boxes and short boxes of records I've been lugging around throughout the times we've moved, and I'm going to figure out what to do with them because they're just sitting down there. I want to know what I have and what to do with them. So, back in May, up until all these years of these periods of collecting, I never really paid any attention to value. I never went on eBay to see what things were selling. I never got a price guide. I didn't know anything about keys. I didn't know anything about slabbing up until May. And even back, given that I definitely was into comics and had a collection of comics, I just never paid attention. I just liked titles and I collected them to read them, and that's it. I liked having them. So I start going through this collection, and in doing so, download, I think, like CLZ app, and then figure out key collector. I was going on to YouTube and watching YouTube channels about how to bag and board properly. I had them bagged and board, but I wanted to kind of really get it dialed in. And so when I start kind of doing some YouTube researching and getting those apps and going through these comics, I just start pricing them, and I'm cataloging them on the app. And what the intent was, frankly, to sell the comics to help pay off some bills and stuff. But as I start going through this comic book collection, I'm like, oh, okay, well, interesting. I have some pretty interesting stuff. I mean, it was under these stairs that I took a little video of as at the intro in this closet. And again, I've moved these things around forever. It's amazing that they're actually in pretty good condition. And I really didn't know what I had in there. Other than that, I just knew I had Hulk and Alpha Flight and stuff like that. So in doing that, I figured out, wow, I actually have some pretty good comics. Nothing insane. A lot of that stuff is 80s, 90s stuff, and then more modern. But I did have some pretty cool stuff, and that led me to ultimately kind of get into watching Lunch Money Comics, which is a channel you should absolutely watch. It's amazing. And I kind of started watching his channel, and really kind of followed his every episode starting from the beginning all the way through, up until I think I caught up finally in September. But it really kind of sparked this passion in me, which I love collecting. I love digging and hunting, and I had done it with records. That's how I built my record collection. But that, frankly, got really difficult to do with records. You can still do it. I mean, I hit thrift stores and flea markets and garage sales when I can, but it had died off. So getting into watching Lunch Money Comics and what Mike does, I was like, you know what? I used to do that for like years, and it was kind of what I did. I collected little knickknacks and antiques and stuff like that, and I loved it. And so he really kind of inspired me to get, kind of take this comic book thing and be like, you know what, I'm not going to sell these comics. I kind of love them. I love doing it and I love reading them. And so the research and the knowledge that I started gaining, I was like, wow, I'm going to kind of maybe be back into comic books. And it was pretty surprising to me. I did not expect it. And I guess here we are now, which was what, like that's like 7 months later. And a lot has transpired in that time, which I'm going to, kind of go through some of those stories in future episodes, in addition just normal hunts and unboxings and things like that. But watching some of these YouTube channels, I'm like, it seems like a lot of fun. I'm not a natural in front of the camera. I feel a little weird, but I'm sitting in my basement and I don't have anybody really to talk to comics with. I've met a few people and since I've been doing this over the last 7 months, but it's a total new community for me. I don't really know anybody. I'm still learning. I can't just like ring off keys off the top of my head like some of these guys can. And I don't have slabs on a wall behind me. I don't even have a wall yet. I actually do, but I'm going to kind of slowly put comics as I go through some of these stories. But yes, so that's where we're at today. I am totally obsessed with comics, and it's been my last 7 months, and I'm really loving the YouTube channel community stuff. That's pretty cool. I met Tyler over at Pocketful of Comics, which is another channel you should check out. That's just I like watching him because he's kind of learning as he goes and kind of stumbling into these really cool collections, and I like that because I'm, while I do have a past with comics and I do know some stuff, a lot of this kind of newer world of comics of like the value and the keys and the slabbing and all that kind of stuff and learning condition and pressing and all that, all new territory. At least has been in the last 7 months. So it's been fun to watch him learn, and he's a great guy. So anyway, I guess as we wrap up, is what I will do is I will show you the Grails under the stairs. One of them I think is a Grail. The rest are, pretty good books, nothing crazy, but they're my books, and I've had them in my collection for a long time. Now traveling through the various moves we've had, and they've survived, and now I'm just happy to show them off. But before we do that, I thought I would say I did note earlier that all the stuff from my original late 80s collection had disappeared, and that is true. But some things did survive. I thought I would show those few things that survived those early years, and this has somehow stayed with me. Batman Death in the Family. I remember this clearly. I have had this traveling around with me for years. I think I probably got this in like 1989 or 88. It's a third printing, I think. So this thing has survived. I mean, it's not in great condition, but it doesn't really matter. I love having it because it's a memento from those days when that movie came out and I was really into Batman. I was so into Batman that at the time you could get the Batman credit card, and I've had this in like I'll call it my memory box of little mementos and stuff. So I've actually my signatures on the back. You probably can't see it, but I drew a little Batman symbol. I used to draw Batman. I was never became an artist, but I did draw Batman quite a bit. I used to love drawing it, those long ears and stuff like that. These are a few things that kind of survived here. I had some Batman pins, the Riddler, the Joker's on a backpack somewhere. I couldn't find it, but yeah, just some cool Batman pins. I mean, I've had these things for I don't even know how what is the math, like 40 years or 35 years, 30 years or something. So yeah, so here we go. I'll show you these are the comics that have been in my original collection. So let's say back to 2006 is when I started collecting. These are the ones that I like to show off because they mean a lot to me. I just loved Alpha Flight. I don't know why. I kind of slanted towards the more obscure teams. I never was an immediate X-Men fan or Fantastic Four fan, although I've become a fan of those since. But I really love Alpha Flight and Alpha Flight number one. I've had this now for a lot of years. So it's a cool book to have. Of course, the other one, I don't know why I loved West Coast Avengers, but man, I was obsessed with them. And now the book just came out again. They're doing another run, so and it's pretty good so far. So I really love the West Coast Avengers. Wonder Man's going to have a movie come or a Marvel Disney Plus show coming out, so stoked about that. But yeah, West Coast Avengers #1, and of course, like I mentioned earlier, Secret Wars. Of course, that movie's coming out in a few years, but I loved the Secret Wars. This was like, man, brings back so many great memories and feelings. And I had the toys, and I just love Secret Wars, man. It was so cool. So Wars #1, and I think I must have gotten this. I remember buying a big lot of Wolverine books on eBay. This is a long time ago, but when I started going through this collection back in May, that's when they were doing a lot of hype for the Deadpool Wolverine movie, and I was like, oh yeah, I wonder if I have this, and I did. Nothing crazy huge, but it's a very cool book. It's in great condition, so happy to have that. So this Howard the Duck #1. I have a thing for Howard the Duck. I liked how he showed up in Secret Invasion. I think it was like he would like just pop up in like events. I think kind of he would show up, and so when he showed up in the movies, I was like, oh heck yeah, man, Howard the Duck's in the movies now, and so he's a thing, and I love him. So I've got a Howard the Duck #1. I've had this for many years. Again, I have a ton of Hulk. I mean, I'm working on completing basically the entire. I'll see how far I can go to the early issues. It might be past my price range, but yeah, I got a Hulk Thunderbolts. This is kind of, I think, the first introduction of the Thunderbolts team. So this is a cool book to have, and with that movie coming out, it's got some hype going on. So yeah, it's cool to have that. Had that. I got a Defenders #1. So some of these like older Browns issues books were gifts from my father-in-law, and he is a big comic book guy, and he used to collect a lot, but he's got a lot of original art. And he used to just grab some books if he saw good deals at comic book shows back in the day, and he gifted me a bunch of Defenders because I like the Hulk and some other stuff, which I'll show off here in a second. But so I've had this. This is cool to have. Defenders #1. Here's another one that he gifted me. Now I have two copies of this, but Miss Marvel. I think this is the first full appearance of Mystique, so pretty cool book to have. It's in amazing condition. There's another one that he gifted me. I think that's the first or second appearance of Abomination. Sorry, I should have looked that up again. I'll start getting in these things memorized better. But yeah, it's an incredible cover and a cool book to have, and it's in really nice shape for the age. And this one right here, this is like the Atomic. This is a variant, and it's like a special one. It's even more limited than the normal Atomic, I think. But yeah, and I mean, this is a great book to have, and it's like going up in value with the movie coming up. But would never let go of this. I remember buying this off the shelf at the comic book store when it came out. So, and I never bought variants. So this one just kind of jumped out at me, and I was like, I gotta have it. And there we go. First cover appearance of Red Hulk. He shows up kind of, and he's barely in the book. It's like maybe like his face or something like that. And the last two. This is one of my favorite covers of all time. Secret Wars, like I said, I loved it. And this is just an amazing book to have. So, I mean, I can remember this, when I was a kid. So the fact that I had it sitting in that box down under the stairs was really excited. It's in pretty nice condition. I mean, it might be like a 9.2 or 9.0. It's fantastic. I'm so happy to have it. And it's been sitting in a box in my various basements and whatnot for years, and I just really had no clue kind of what I had. And it's a pretty good book to own. Definitely continues to be on the hot list. And my final book, and here's the Grail under the stairs, that I did not know I had sitting in this box. I didn't know what it meant to have it, but there it is, giant size X-Men. I really just had no idea of the significance of Giant Size X-Men. I probably have been told by my father-in-law who gifted this to me, um, but it probably didn't register because I didn't know it was in there for until May. And I'm going through a box and it's just kind of sitting in there amongst some other titles. And when I pulled up the app, and my jaw about hit the floor. So I'm pretty happy. This is definitely like the best book I have in my collection. It tends to be, I think it's a lower grade. I think it's in the 4.0 range, 4.5, maybe somewhere around there. But I mean, giant size X-Men, man, that's pretty cool, and a gift. So thank you, father-in-law. Appreciate you. Yeah. So those are the Grails under the stairs, and happy to show those off to you. Happy to share, guys, my story with you. I think going forward is what I'm going to do is continue to kind of look in the past over the last 7 months to kind of highlight how I got to where I'm at, and then also kind of throw in some videos about what's going on in the future or what's going on in the present with buying collections and stuff like that. And of course, my cat Ben has to make an appearance at the very end of the video. But yeah, so and then I also collect records. So I think you're going to have some videos that I'll pop in maybe twice a month while I'm going to actually um, move in a different direction and highlight some of my favorite albums and music. So if you're a comic book lover and you happen to like music and you want to check out some of my vinyl stuff, I think I have a pretty diverse collection and interesting taste. So you can kind of jump in on that if you want to be turned on to some interesting music or just hear what I'm listening to. But yeah, going forward, here we are. That was episode 1. It's a lengthy one, but there's a story to tell. I kind of had to get it out there. And then going forward, I'll try to keep them a little bit shorter for everybody's time. Hopefully, you stuck in for the whole thing. Do me a favor and hit like and subscribe. And glad you can join me here at Outer Worlds Comics. Thank you.